My name is Bill Thomas. I was a very successful CEO, president of corporations, Fortune 500. I worked for Bristol Myers Squibb. I retired as president of Western Union International. And all things were going fantastic in terms of my career. I loved what I did. I did a very good job of it. Looking in from the outside, you would never, ever suspect anything was wrong. However, my family life at that time was a shambles. Was moving into late stage of addiction. My ex-wife was also in late stage of addiction, and it was uncontrollable. In fact, when I left Western Union, I was living in Denver. My ex-wife was living in Manhattan, and we were beginning divorce proceedings, but we had been that way for a few years. So the relationship, what I understood to be a marital relationship, was really absurd. And I didn't realize it because I was stuck in it. I stayed in the marriage too long. I was married 25 years. And I would say the last 5 years of it, we had just grown so far apart. Alcohol started to take over. I filed for divorce. I felt guilt and shame because I was leaving a family, abandoning a family. Right. My mother was also an alcoholic. So there's a lot of secrets in the home that I had to keep from my father about my mother. And I was at a very young age, and she would do things like have men over and say, "Don't tell your father." And I grew up with this, oh my God, I can't tell my father, and something's going on. I don't quite understand it. The relationship with my mother it wasn't comfortable. I left at 18 with a very poor outlook about women. So in fact, I married my mother. That's the typical story, the way it goes. And again, the idea of a healthy, adult, intimate relationship, it eluded me because I didn't have it there as well. Many years later, Chantal and I meet, and I'm thinking, this is amazing. What I'm feeling is incredible. This is a real loving relationship. But I still had all the baggage of, what do I do with it? How do I handle this now? Because I'm used to all the old habits of the lying and the secrets and this sort of thing, because that's what I know. So the dynamic that happened is that Chantal would try to get closer and closer to me, and I would pull away because it didn't feel good on my end, because in the past, being vulnerable was a trap. It was a trap with my mother. It was a trap with my ex-wife. So she was getting closer, I was pulling away, and that was our tension for the first while. So I had a great side, shiny, glossy, and then a dark side.
Well, I'm Chantal, and I hail from Canada, Ottawa, Canada. I'm an attorney, and I was educated in Canada. Started my career at Gallings, which is a top-tier law firm. I was involved in trade law, worked on different files involving the GATT, today's the WTO. I was very independent. I had been on my own since I was 17. My parents were divorced. My career evolved really well. I just loved what I did. And for me, leadership was really important. I had a team on 5 continents. I loved to negotiate deals. And I'd say my life was a very fun life, very full life. I think if I had to say what was my Achilles, it was the relationship with my father. My father had many extramarital affairs. We lived in the countryside, and he would go away for a weekend and literally leave us stranded. But we were well taken care of. We had a beautiful home, and what I learned is you maintain appearances. What goes on inside the home stays inside the home. So I lived that duality. And of course, I was always seeking my father's, approval. He was old-fashioned, didn't really think women should, do much more than stay home. And I went on to have this international career. And so I always felt like I had to do more. I was the kid that brought home the A+, wanting attention and being validated. And that didn't happen with my father even until the day he passed. So at 29, I married. And the man I married was, not surprisingly, also very self-centered. And the world revolved around him. It was familiar to me. It's the same way I had interacted with my father. Needless to say, our marriage after 12 years didn't work out. Then I worked with Western Union. I was based in Vienna, didn't have any children, and was promoted to Denver, their head office, which is where I met Bill. And that's where we became romantically involved. And it was great. We had a lot in common. We loved everything on two wheels. We loved to cycle and motorcycle. And we decided to choose a new city and start our life together. So we moved here with a great vision of our future together, at the top of our careers, thinking we would be going back to work. But then, life started really happening to us, I guess. Bill's mother became very ill, and we went to Canada to be by her bedside.
Yeah, it was a rough time for both of us because I was also in the middle of divorce, and my ex-wife and family was in London, Ontario, the same city. So there's a lot of stress just being there, engaging in a divorce proceedings, as well as watching my mother pass away. And it was tough. And a month after she passed away, we went in and cleaned the house out and prepared it for sale. And what we did is we started tearing down some of the walls in the basement, and between the drywall, it was full of vodka bottles. They were my vodka bottles. No one had any idea how much I was drinking even back then. It was a shocker. It was a shocker to me how many there were, but a shocker to everybody else to see what had been going on.
But I didn't see that. That was your sister saw that. Yeah, I was fortunate that I had never been really exposed to addiction in my family. And when we came back to our home in Philadelphia, I was unaware of Bill's drinking. And he was never drunk. He was very functional with his alcohol. And the morning I discovered it, I'll never forget that moment. We juiced. Bill would make the juice in the morning. That was our routine. And it was 6 a.m. He made grapefruit juice. Somehow our glasses got mixed up, and I drank from his glass. And it was almost solid vodka with little, grapefruit flavoring. And that was the moment I realized something was going on. But what I thought was, well, he's lost his mom. He's just finalized his divorce. He's retired, or at least taken a pause in his career. I was seeing the man I loved, and I was not, my eyes were not open. So our relationship it became very stressful. The slam doors, the midnight arguments, the I'm leaving you. And finally I said, we need to go see a relationship counselor. And that's what we did. We went to see Dr. Perry Moyer in Philadelphia. And fortunately, within 2 or 3 sessions, she handed Bill a phone number for an addiction expert and said, Bill, you've got to go see this addiction expert.
Yeah. So I went to see Dr. Cohen, addiction counselor in Philadelphia. I attended a few sessions with him. Many of them I attended. I had been drinking before the session, vodka. And I was surprised at how he could tell, because I didn't think he could smell vodka, but he knew right away I had been drinking. But he clearly got me through the realization that I have a disease and there's no going back, and I needed to go to rehab. I chose Karen because it was closest to Philadelphia, and I spent 28 days there.
And I think for me, those 28 days were so full of doubts and questions. First of all, I didn't know anything about addiction. So I started reading every book I could. I started attending Al-Anon meetings. And true to form, I wanted to save him. I thought somehow I had let Bill down. I hadn't understood his grief or his pain. And my job was to save him, and all my focus became on Bill. And I lost myself. I used to be this independent attorney, very successful, a leader with a vision, and all of a sudden my world became like this big. It was all about Bill.
As my world became incredibly small, I was, had been running a $2 billion international company, and now I'm in a dorm in Karen with a cot to sleep on. Like, what happened? What the hell happened to me? And here I am. But I didn't resist it. When I got to Karen, in the back of my mind, I knew I had to be there because it had been going on for such a long time. I knew I had to take care of it at a very deep level. So I was a pretty obedient, cooperative patient at Karen. But I knew that was the place I had to be, but I had no idea what to do when I left.
Bill was like the poster boy of recovery. They said, do 90 meetings in 90 days. He did it. They said, get a sponsor. He did it. Do therapy. He did. I think what happened is we used our executive skills and we put together a plan. And I remember so often Bill saying, everything has to be counterintuitive now. And that used to make me so nervous because I didn't know if counterintuitive meant I'm going to get sober and I'm going to leave you and go back to my first family and go save my ex-wife and my children. So it was a real challenging time figuring out where I stood and what to do to support Bill, who was doing everything he should be doing. And I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to do by doing Al-Anon. I did my own private therapy for the first time in my life and became Bill's cheerleader. Then we started saying, okay, we need to put our life together. So we created a narrative for why we were both not drinking. We are avid cyclists, so we signed up for a 100-mile ride that was almost a year away, and we told all of our friends, we're really serious about this, we're going to have our parties, but no alcohol, please respect that. And so we gave ourselves this space in which to live a sober life, but under the pretenses of training for the century. And
Right.
And we started making new friends. They didn't know us from our past, so we could show up as we wanted to in the way we wanted our relationship to be, the way that we wanted our entertaining to be. Mm-hmm. And then we went through a phase where we also focused a lot on our spirituality.
Yeah, so we worked really hard at a number of things that we were flying by the seat of our pants many ways, using our intuitive skills to say, this is what we should be doing. This is what we've got to try. This is how we're going to build bigger community, better community.
We had therapists, we had sponsors, we had friends in recovery. But I think what was missing is we didn't have other couples, and we didn't know what the process looked like as a couple. And I really needed to know Bill more because the man I had known, I thought was Bill. But then I started realizing that Bill didn't really even know himself. And I had changed. I was no longer this great independent person. I'd become sort of all wrapped up in Bill. So I think part of the work that we were both doing individually was figuring out who we were again, but we didn't know how do you figure out who you are as a couple. And so we just, as Bill said, we just tried everything. But the challenges, they were real. I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And as I was going into treatment or surgery, my first concern wasn't about how the surgery was going to affect me. I was worried about Bill relapsing. And now today, 12 years into recovery, we find that when we start, arguing, whether it's about whatever it
The
may be,
littlest of things.
the littlest of things, we'll call it the laundry arguments. what we do now is we pause and we say, what's going on?